Alright, welcome. So today we're going to talk about section 2.7, which is on polynomial and rational inequalities. Okay, and to start I want to go ahead and give you some steps. So to solve polynomial inequalities, you're going to do 5 steps. Okay, first you factor to find the boundary points. Step 2, plot the boundary points on a number line. Step 3, pick a test value for that boundary. Step 4, decide the sign of the test value. Step 5, shade the correct interval. Or intervals. Okay, so again, this is going to make sense, at least hopefully, in just a second. And then I just think it's easier if you go ahead and write down all your steps before we try to bounce back and forth. Alright, you ready? Okay, here we go. So I want you to solve and graph the solution. Number 1. Let's say I have x squared minus x is greater than 20. Alright, step 1. Factor to find the boundary points. So I'm going to go ahead and factor this, which means I have to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to have x squared minus x minus 20. Now, I like to just leave the inequality symbol, but if that bothers you, you could put an equal sign there and then just keep that inequality in mind. Alright, so let's factor. So I need, last term is a negative, so I need one positive, one negative. Things that multiply to give me 20, subtract to give me 1. So I'm going to use 5 and 4. Okay, next, let's just keep going. So we do x plus 4 has to be greater than 0, x minus 5 has to be greater than 0. So x is greater than negative 4, x is greater than 5. So far, a little bit of change with the inequality symbol. Now go to a number line and let's go ahead and plot those on a number line. So here's 0. So, first question, open circle or closed circle? Since it is a greater than, it's going to just be an open circle. So I'm going to put an open circle at negative 4 and an open circle at 5. Alright, sorry. I thought I had waited long enough after school, but obviously not. Now, to figure out your shading, you're going to make yourself a chart. So over here to the side, you're going to make a chart. If I were in this range, if this is where I was going to shade, what numbers are in this range? From negative infinity until I get to negative 4. And what numbers are in this range? From negative 4 to 5. And then in this range, it would be 5 to positive infinity. Alright, so far so good. Now what I want you to do is pick a random number that's in those ranges. So here, from negative infinity to negative 4, what do you say we pick? Negative 5. You could pick any number. I picked the one that's closest to that. And here, between negative 4 and 5, I'm going to pick 0. And then between 5 and infinity, I'm going to pick 6. And I'm going to put a little parentheses there. Okay? So far, so good. Alright. Whew. Now what I want you to do is I want you to go back to this. And I'm going to type in negative 5 plus 4. And I don't care about its answer. I just care about its sign. And then I'm going to go to this one and type in negative 5 minus 5. And again, I don't care about the answer. I just care about the sign. So negative 5 and 4 gives me a negative value. Negative 5 and negative 5 gives me a negative value. Okay? Now, do you agree up here, what are you really doing with those? You're multiplying them. So a negative times a negative gives me a positive for this interval. Okay? Let's try it now this time. So we're plugging in 0 into these two factors. And then we're going to decide if it's positive or negative. Alright, so I'm going to plug in 0. So 0 plus 4. And then I'm going to plug in 0 here. 0 minus 5. Alright, again, I don't care about their values. I only care about their signs. So I have 0 plus 4 is positive. 0 minus 5 is negative. When I multiply a positive times a negative, I get a negative. We do it all again now. Again, same process. We're going to take 6. We're going to plug it into both. Alright, so I have 6 plus 4. Oops, I'm sorry, I changed colors on you. And then I have 6 minus 5. So again, going back to these factors is where I'm plugging in. So 6 plus 4 gives me a positive. 6 minus 5 gives me a positive. Now I multiply. A positive times a positive gives me a positive. The last thing, the reason we did all of this is so that we could determine our shading. So now go back to the original problem, which was greater than 0. So is a positive number greater than 0, or is a negative number greater than 0? I'm hoping you said positive, which means I'm going to shade the interval from negative infinity to negative 4. And I'm going to shade the interval from 5 to infinity. And that's the solution to the first problem. Okay? Alright, let's see if we can do the next one. And this is really all we're doing. It's just, you know, the factoring might get a little more complex. Let's say I have 9x squared plus 3x minus 2 is less than or equal to 0. Okay. Step 1, factor. So since this has a lead coefficient, I'm going to come over here and do the big T, like we learned back when we did our factoring review. So 9 times negative 2 is negative 18x squared, and I need the middle term to be positive 3x. So now I write down my factors of 18. So I have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6, 4, nope, 5, nope, okay. Which one of these subtracts to give me my 3? Now, do you remember bringing those back over here and making a substitution? So first term stays, last term stays. I take out the positive 3x and I need to replace it with these. Now, since that last term is negative, do you agree one has to be positive, one has to be negative? So I'm going to let this one be positive and this one be negative. The reason I did that again is because I need a positive 3x. If factoring is still an issue for you guys, I really need you to get in during Fluco time to see me so that I can fix that, because it's just going to come back and haunt you. Now we group and group. So what did this first group have in common? They have a 3x. And that gives me 3x minus 1. And my second group has a 2. And I get 3x minus 1. And remember, this is where you do your test to make sure that you're right. So I have 3x plus 2, 3x minus 1 is less than or equal to 0. Okay, this is important because these are what we're going to be plugging into. Go ahead and separate it so that you can figure out where your circles will go on your graph. So 3x plus 2 is less than or equal to 0. And 3x minus 1 is less than or equal to 0. So 3x is less than or equal to negative 2, so x is less than or equal to negative 2/3. And here 3x is less than or equal to 1, x is less than or equal to 1/3. Now don't panic when you go to put this on a number line. What we're going to do is we're just going to slap 0 there. We're going to call this negative 2/3. We're going to call this 1/3, and then we're going to go. First question, do I need open circles or closed circles? So go back to the original problem and ask yourself, is it, oh, this one is less than or equal to. So I want a closed circle and a closed circle. Alright? Now, to decide where the shading will be, whether it will be here, here, or here, you're going to make your little chart and pick your intervals. Okay? Probably should have made my chart below, but that's okay. We're just going to put it here. So from this interval, we would term from negative infinity till negative 2/3. Don't breathe quick. The fractions will be okay. Here, this interval is from negative 2/3 to 1/3. And finally, this interval is from 1/3 to infinity. Now, when you pick numbers, do you really want to pick fractions? Probably not. So, what is a number that's smaller than negative 2/3? What would be a number down here? I'm hoping you guys said negative 1. And then what would be a number in between negative 2/3 and 1/3? 0.
Miss Carr.
Okay, I won't make this mistake again. This is worse than lunch. Now find a number between 1/3 and infinity. And I hope you said 1. Alright, let's test these. Where do I put them to test them? They're going to go into these factors. And remember, I don't care about the result, I just care if it's positive or negative. So you guys don't even have to write down what I'm doing. You don't even have to put 3 times negative 1 plus 2. If you can do it in your head, 3 times negative 1 minus 1. I'm okay with that. In fact, in a few minutes, that's what I'm going to start doing. So negative 3 plus 2 is a negative value. And this would be negative 3 minus 1, that's a negative value. A negative times a negative results in a positive. Okay, let's plug in 0. 3 times 0 plus 2 gives me a positive. 3 times 0 minus 1 gives me a negative, and a negative times a positive is a negative. Alright, last time through, plug in 1. And this time I'm going to try to do it without showing the work. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is positive. 3 times 1 is 3, minus 1 is positive, and a positive times a positive is a positive. Now, go back. What is the original problem asking for? It's asking for it to be less than or equal to. So is a positive number less than 0, or is a negative number less than 0? I'm hoping you said negative, so we want to shade this region in between the two. And that would be my solution. Okay? Alright, we're going to try one more, and then the video will end, and then we'll pick up tomorrow in class. So the last one is x cubed plus 3x squared is less than or equal to x plus 3. Alright, let's bring everybody over to this side. So x cubed plus 3x squared minus x minus 3 is less than or equal to 0. How do you factor 4 terms? Hopefully it'll group. So let's try it. Alright, do these guys have anything in common? They have an x squared, and that gives us x plus 3. This one I can factor out a negative 1, and I get x plus 3. So I have x squared minus 1, x plus 3 is less than or equal to 0. Is this factored, though? Can't this go down even further? So can I finally get x plus 1, x minus 1, x plus 3? So this time I'm going to have 3 things I need to plug into. Okay. I'm going to draw my number line here so I have room for my chart down below. Alright, so here's 0. I need a negative 1, a positive 1, and a negative 3. Okay, because remember guys, you're going to go ahead and separate this and have x plus 1 is less than or equal to 0, so that's where I'm getting negative 1 from. X minus 1, that's where I'm getting 1 from, and x plus 3. That's where I'm getting negative 3 from. Okay? Alright, so I need a circle, and is it going to be closed or open? Since it's less than or equal to, I'm going to close it. So I'm going to put a circle at negative 1, a circle at negative 3, and a circle at positive 1. Alright, and I am now going to make my chart. So, this time, do you notice you have 4 intervals? So this first interval is from negative infinity to negative 3. So what's a good number that's less than negative 3? Let's pick negative 4. My next interval is between negative 3 and negative 1. So pick a good number there. Between negative 3 and negative 1, how about negative 2? My next interval is between negative 1 and 1. What's a good number there? I like 0. Anytime I get 0 as a choice, I'm going to grab it. Alright, the last interval is up here, which is at 1 to infinity. Alright, what's a good choice? The number greater than 1. How about 2? Now this time, if you want to, off to the side, you can write what you're plugging into. So I've got to plug into x plus 1. I've got to plug into x minus 1. And I've got to plug into x plus 3. And then I'm going to get my results. So if you want to add these lines into your chart, you can, if that helps you. So the first time through, I'm plugging into this with negative 4. So negative 4 plus 1 gives me a negative. Plug it into this one. Negative 4 minus 1 gives me a negative. Oh, I'm running out of colors. We'll do purple. Negative 4 plus 3 gives me a negative. A negative times a negative times a negative gives me a negative. Do it all again for the next interval. So negative 2. Negative 2 plus 1 gives me a negative. If you can do it without showing me, by all means. Negative 2 minus 1 gives me a negative. Sorry, that should have been in blue. And negative 2 plus 3 gives me a positive. So this time a negative times a negative is a positive times a positive gives me a positive. Alright, 2 more to go and then we can talk about our shading. I know I'm a little bit over, so let me see if I can't speed up. Alright, let's plug in 0. 0 plus 1 is positive. 0 minus 1 is negative. 0 plus 3 is positive. A positive times a negative times a positive is a negative. Alright, last time through, let's plug in 2. 2 plus 1 gives me a positive. 2 minus 1 gives me a positive. 2 plus 3 gives me a positive. And a positive times a positive times a positive is a positive. Alright, to wrap things up, I need less than. So do I want our negative numbers less than 0 or positive numbers? Hopefully you said negatives, so I want to shade this interval and this interval. And that's where we'll leave off. We'll pick up tomorrow. Have a great evening.